I want you to imagine this for a second. You're at home on a Saturday night. You're with your 8-month pregnant wife, only to be startled by a loud knock on the door. The people behind the door identify themselves rather aggressively as federal agents. Your mind races to your involvement in peaceful protest that the current regime wants to silence. But you let the agents in. The agents come in and they declare that your student visa has been canceled. But you tell them, well, I have a permanent green card. I have a permanent card to stay in the country. And they tell you the regime has canceled that as well. When your pregnant wife asks the agents if you're being charged with a crime, they tell her to shut up or they're going to charge her with crimes, even though she's a U.S. citizen. From there, you're swept away to a clandestine government facility. When your wife and your lawyer ask the government, this regime, where you are, they tell you location about a half hour away. You go there, not there. You've been moved halfway across the country in one night. And all of that happened because you were engaged in protests and in speech that the regime that runs that nation you live in doesn't approve of and wants to silence. Did that happen in Vladimir Putin's Russia? Did that happen in North Korea? China? Saudi Arabia? Nope. It happened Saturday in New York City to Mahmud Khalil. Mahmud Khalil is a recent graduate of Columbia University. And his 8-month pregnant wife was with him when Trump's henchmen came to the door to come and take him. Khalil was not charged with a crime. He's never been charged with a crime. If he was charged with a crime, we would have a different discussion, but never charged. But the regime, in this case, the Trump regime, ordered Khalil arrested. And they're working the strip of his green card. He has a green card, not just a student visa. He's a green card. His wife is a U.S. citizen. And why did they arrest him? Why did they want to take his green card away and deport him? Because he was involved in protests that this regime opposes. And those protests are about the humanity of Palestinian Christians and Muslims. Yes, he was advocating for Palestinian Christians and Muslims. That is why he was arrested. That is why he's going to lose potentially his green card. This is no exaggeration. Khalil had not committed any acts of violence. He didn't incite a January 6th type attack on a government building, nor did he provide material support to those who waged such an attack. If he had, he would be charged with crimes. So let's be very clear. He's been charged with no crimes because he committed no crimes. The Trump DOJ would have immediately charged him with crimes if he had committed a crime. If they could even trumped up charges, they would have charged him. But they have nothing. They just don't like what he said. And they want to make an example of him. Khalil was arrested solely for being one of the student leaders at Columbia University of the protest last year that were pro-Palestinian. In fact, Homeland Security spokeswoman Tricia McLaughlin made it very clear that's why he was arrested. I'll read what she says. There's no allegation that he broke the law. There's no crime they allege that he committed. What they said is that the arrest of Khalil was, quote, in support of President Trump's executive orders prohibiting anti-Semitism. Let me read that again. He was arrested because of President Trump's executive orders prohibiting anti-Semitism. That's not a law. That is simply Trump's edict. And in Trump's edict, he has now defined what the term anti-Semitism means. And if you commit what Donald Trump has called anti-Semitism, you could be arrested. You could be deported. Again, no crime. They're just saying he allegedly committed some act of anti-Semitism. Did they give us an example? Well, sort of. They said that Khalil had, quote, led activities aligned to Hamas. Hear that again. Words mean a lot when it comes to legal issues. Khalil had, quote, led activities aligned to Hamas. This sounds like something like Joseph Stalin would have used as a fabricated reason to put people in prison and have them disappear. What is activities aligned, A-L-I-G-E-N-E-D, aligned to Hamas? Not in support of Hamas. They're not even alleging that. Aligned to Hamas. Hamas had called for humanitarian relief to be provided to the women and children in Gaza that Netanyahu had blocked food for. Is a person aligned to Hamas if you also called for food and supplies and medical supplies to be allowed to the people of Gaza because Hamas said that same thing? Are the Jewish students who bravely led some of the pro-Palestinian protests, including at Columbia, aligned to Hamas because they objected to Netanyahu's collective punishment or mass slaughter of Palestinian women and children? Does that make you aligned to Hamas? Apparently it does with the Trump administration. If you criticize Netanyahu, if you spoke out about Palestinian humanity, you're aligned to Hamas. This is the world we live in now. Trump's regime Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, gleefully proclaimed on Twitter after the arrest, "We will be revoking the visas and or green cards of Hamas supporters in America so they can be deported." Did Rubio provide evidence of that very serious charge, saying this person supported Hamas? Well, Hamas is designated as a terrorist group in America. If Khalil had provided material support for Hamas, he would be charged with crimes instantly. And of course should be. But they didn't charge him because there's no evidence of that. It doesn't exist. And then today, a short time ago, Trump took a victory lap for the arrest, writing, "Following my previously signed executive order, ICE proudly apprehended and detained Mahmud Khalil, a radical foreign pro-Hamas student on the campus of Columbia University." And then he adds, "This is the first of many arrests to come." What is a radical foreign pro-Hamas student? Is he saying that he had vocally said he supported some actions by Hamas? We don't know because there's no evidence provided. And that wouldn't even be a crime. If you're allowed to say things, you're allowed to think things. This is the United States of America. It's only when you act like providing material support for a terrorist group do you then suffer criminal penalties. That's the way it's got to be. Now, look, if Khalil had been convicted of crimes such as providing material support to a foreign terrorist organization or numerous others under federal law in which the government could take away and rescind a green card, including theft, robbery, crimes of moral turpitude, that's the way the statute reads, then he would be charged, and if convicted, he would lose his green card. That's how our system works. I've got no problem with that. That's called due process. That's not what this is. Please understand. Even FoxNews.com reporting, and I'll read the line because it's stunning that even Fox News, and I guess someone who did the reporting there, has a little bit of concerns of what's going on in this country. They wrote, quote, "The detention of a legal permanent resident who has not been charged with a crime marked an extraordinary move with an uncertain legal foundation." I guess they were being nice. How about no legal foundation? Not uncertain, no legal foundation. And we just learned a short time ago that Khalil, who was living in New York, and first they moved to New Jersey, now they took him to Louisiana. He's at a facility in Louisiana just to add to the cruelty, just to make it harder for his 8-month pregnant wife to go see her husband. Because at 8 months pregnant, it's probably going to be really hard to fly to Louisiana. But that's what they want. Here's the message. I don't care what you think of the Middle East. And I can assure you this, I'm of Palestinian heritage. I am pro-Palestinian. But I also defend the rights of Americans or green card holders or anyone on our soil to advocate for Israel. And if you wanted to advocate, and I played clips early on after October 7th of right-wing Jews in New York calling for slaughtering all the Palestinians, well, you have every right to say that. And listen, I find it despicable, but I will defend your right to say that. If you act on it, then it's a crime. So just to be clear, I 100% defend the right of people to advocate for the state of Israel, even Netanyahu's policies, which are in some cases war crimes. But this is America. This is what we do. You don't put someone in jail because you disagree with what they're saying. But here's the thing that you got to take away from this. If you think Donald Trump is just going to stop with punishing people with student visas or green cards who engage in speech he opposes, you have not been paying attention. You have not been listening to this show. We are just 50 days into the Trump regime's multifaceted, multi-front war on free speech. Donald Trump hates us for our freedoms. Yes, Donald Trump hates us for our freedoms, and he wants to take them away the same way bin Laden did. That's who Donald Trump is. It all began with Trump banning the Associated Press from covering White House briefings and Air Force One. Why? Because they refused to use the term Gulf of America when describing the Gulf of Mexico, as Trump had demanded. So based on the content of what they were saying, Trump gleefully banned them. And that ban continues. Then last month, as I discussed on this show and wrote about, Trump's FCC chair, the blindly loyal Brendan Carr, one of the architects of Project 2025, has opened investigations into what is known as progressive media outlets, PBS and NPR, trying to take their funding away because he doesn't like their content. And Carr reinstated complaints and investigations against CBS and NBC brought by right-wing groups. But he didn't reinstate one against Fox News brought by a more liberal group. Only the ones brought by the far-right groups that want to shut down media critical of Donald Trump. FCC Commissioner Ana Gomez stated at the time, and she's a Democratic appointee, about Carr's action, saying, this is designed to instill fear in broadcast station and influence a network's editorial decisions. Absolutely. That's exactly what it's about. It's to instill fear in networks around the nation so they self-censor, so they don't criticize Donald Trump as much, or Elon Musk, or his policies, or his tariffs. And if you were listening Friday, I talked about something that I found extremely concerning, deeply concerning, and not just because I'm a lawyer, but because what Trump is doing is going at one of the foundations of our working democratic republic. What Trump did over the last few weeks to Little Press is something that Mark Zaid, who's a well-known lawyer, national security lawyer, called one of the most un-American things I've ever heard. That's what Mark Zaid said on Friday about Trump doing this. Guess what they did today? They took Mark Zaid's security clearance away today. Tulsi Gabbard was gleeful about taking it away from him because he spoke up. This is all part of this, my friends. What Zaid was referring to was Trump using the power of the federal government to target law firms, simply representing people that Donald Trump views as his political enemies. This first began a few weeks ago. Didn't get a lot of press. I read about it. I was concerned, but I thought maybe it was a one-off. Trump stripped security clearance of lawyers at a law firm that represents a lot of Democratic people, has a lot of Democratic Obama and Biden lawyers working there. And why did he take their security clearance? Which hurts a firm in Washington, D.C., because then you can't do cases with classified documents or whistleblowers. Why? This law firm, as Trump put in writing, had provided free legal services to Jack Smith, the special counsel. When he was leaving office, he went to this firm and asked for legal advice, and they gave it to him for free because he was afraid that Trump was going to prosecute him when his time as special counsel was over. So Trump, to punish a law firm that dared help one of his enemies, Jack Smith, hurt their bottom line. And when that didn't get much pushback, what did Trump do on Thursday, just a few days ago? He went further. He punished another big law firm, Democratic law firm called Perkins Coie. He not only took security clearance away, which again hurts their business, he barred lawyers from the firm from entering federal buildings. He ordered the federal government to review their contracts to see if anyone is retaining the Perkins Coie firm and they can no longer work with them. And worse, he ordered an investigation by his DOJ and Department of Labor into the firm for hiring practices in violation of his DEI executive order. No different than Mahmud Khalil, based on a Trump edict. Trump puts an edict out there and then uses the government to enforce his edict. It's not law. It's not been voted on by Congress. His edict, like a dictator like Stalin or Hitler or Mussolini, he says, here's the law. And now I'm going to use my DOJ to go enforce it. So he accused the Perkins firm of violating his DEI mandates that he now views as law. Why did he go after Perkins firm? We don't have to guess. He put it in the actual executive order because the Perkins firm represented Hillary Clinton and her campaign in the 2016 campaign, the DNC, and had retained the research firm that went out and did the Steele dossier. So they didn't commit any crimes, just like Mahmoud Khalil didn't commit any crimes. They didn't break any laws. They simply engaged in speech that Trump doesn't approve of. So he uses the full force of government. And the fact that this law firm is being investigated means now they have to hire outside counsel, which will cost them hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And they'll probably be fined massively by the Trump regime to hurt this firm. The head of the American Bar Association, of course, slammed this, and Mark Zaid, who now lost his security clearance, said what Trump is doing by targeting law firms is to send a message to law firms out there: don't represent people that Donald Trump doesn't like. Don't help those people. And don't sue his administration either, because the Perkins firm has 2 big lawsuits against Trump over executive orders. That's why Mark Zaid called it, quote, the most un-American thing I've ever heard. That's why I want you to understand the big picture here. This is not about Mahmoud Khalil. This is about the United States of America, about your freedom and my freedom, the ability to speak our mind on political issues without fear of retribution, persecution, imprisonment, fines, investigation. What Trump is doing is following the authoritarian playbook. He didn't invent this. He's just following it. I've said this numerous times. Donald Trump, there's nothing original about him. He follows the fascist playbook over and over. And that playbook in this scenario is make a few examples, visible examples, and then others will self-censor. And who does this? Vladimir Putin does this. As the Atlantic Council, which is a very well-respected think tank in D.C., noted recently, the Putin regime has learned that targeted cases of persecution are sufficient to exercise control over the wider population, adding the quantity of people who have been frightened into silence is many thousands of times greater than the relatively small number of Russians currently being held as political prisoners. That is what Trump is doing here, my friends. By going after Mahmoud Khalil and suspending aid of grants to Columbia University, the goal is to shut down any pro-Palestinian protest around the nation, to shut down any criticism of Benjamin Netanyahu for his war crimes around the nation, any college, any university. Donald Trump's going after the Associated Press to send a message to the media. If you don't do exactly what I want, if you don't submit, if you don't bend the knee, I'm going to hurt your business. You're going to lose access to the White House, to Air Force One, to White House events, which is important if you're the Associated Press, to law firms, to the FCC, punishing NPR, PBS. This is one checkbox after the other, and we are just 50 days into this. This isn't over 2 years or 3 years. This is 50 days. And the more Trump gets away with this, the more he's emboldened. And the further he goes, to the point that one day we wake up and we don't even recognize the United States of America for what it was. We truly don't recognize it anymore. As Timothy Snyder wrote in his book on tyranny, and he wrote this line that stayed with me. If none of us is prepared to die for freedom, then all of us will die under tyranny. Let me repeat that. He wrote, if none of us is prepared to die for freedom, then all of us will die under tyranny. When I read that line last year, I thought it was a very powerful line. And then I quoted in my articles between the time Trump won and was sworn in. What a powerful line. I've quoted in other articles. But now when I read that line, if none of us are prepared to die for freedom, then all of us will die under tyranny. It's no longer just a powerful line. As unbelievable as it might sound, we are now closer than ever to having to make that very choice. That's where we stand. We are faced with a full-blown fascist administration on U.S. soil. And how this ends, I don't know. I have no idea. Will we be allowed to have elections in 2016? Will Trump round up political dissidents and critics? Will he shut down media outlets, let a few to survive? Will he punish a few more visibly so there's more self-censorship? Does this end the way I hope, where people rise up, we win our elections, there's a tribunal afterwards, and that Donald Trump and Marco Rubio, just like those who were in the Nazi regime at Nuremberg trials, are put on trial, if Trump's even alive. And people in his administration are put on trial and prosecuted for crimes against humanity. Because that's where this is going. Everything from history is screaming at us. That's where this is going.